Hello, welcome to our Facebook Live today. An amazing session lined up for you. I see some people in our audience. It's their first time joining us at MyHeritage for a Facebook Live. So welcome. We hope that you'll stay for many more to come. We've been offering Facebook Lives for the past year and a half here on the MyHeritage Facebook page, bringing you content related to genealogy, family history, DNA, from experts around the world, from MyHeritage employees. And we've just heard from all of our users how helpful these sessions have been in teaching them new things and getting them started on their journey to discoveries. And of course, we love hearing from our audience throughout these sessions and hearing about all the discoveries that you and your family have made using MyHeritage. So today's session, we'll be talking about French historical records on MyHeritage. We've recently released a number of French collections, and we hope that you and your family will be able to uncover a lot of new information from those collections. And we're so excited to have our Director of Content at MyHeritage give us a great walkthrough into those collections and a little bit of background information. Before we bring Mike up onto the screen to introduce himself, and to get his presentation underway, I'll let you guys know about a giveaway that we'll do today. We'll be giving away a MyHeritage DNA kit to one lucky winner in the audience. And all that you have to do to enter is just let us know what you've discovered in a historical record on MyHeritage. So any historical record, doesn't have to be a French one, even though we'll be talking about historical records from France today, but just what you've discovered about your family, a new piece of information from a newspaper record, perhaps, or maybe a passenger list that told you something that you didn't know about one of your ancestors and where they traveled. So let us know what you've uncovered in a historical record on MyHeritage for your chance to win. And we'll be giving away one MyHeritage DNA kit to a lucky winner. And of course, you can then give that away to a friend or family member. So we'll also write that in the comments section, and we hope to get a lot of comments. We love hearing about all your discoveries throughout our Facebook Lives. As always, any comments or questions that you may have throughout this session, feel free to put them in the comments section, and we hope to answer some questions at the end of today's lecture. So now I'm going to bring Mike Mansfield onto the screen, and he is our Director of Content here at MyHeritage. Let me bring him up to say hello to all of you.
Sound okay?
Yeah, you sound perfect. It took a second to get you into the screen, but it looks like we've got you here now.
Great. Well, I'll go ahead and dive right in if that's what you'd like.
Yeah, that would be great. Let me just bring your slides up here one moment, and I'll get those up. There we go. You can take it away.
Awesome. Well, it's my pleasure to be with you today. I was reading some of your comments as we were waiting for the start. Many people from, sounds like it's cold out in the Midwest there, so bundle up. Yeah, so as Esther said, my name is Mike Mansfield. I'm the Director of Content Operations here at MyHeritage. I won't read all of my statements here about some of my biography, but you'll see there that I don't have family from France. I wish I did, because the records in France are incredible. Some of the best genealogical records anywhere are to be found in France. My interest in France and French culture, though, does date back quite a ways. I studied French in high school, all 4 years, a little bit at university as well, and I lived in French Canada for about 2 years. It was a long time ago, and my ability to speak French is somewhat greatly diminished, but I'm still pretty good with the language. Let's talk about the outline that I hope to do today with you for about 30 to 40 minutes. I'll introduce just a little bit about some of the past and new collections on MyHeritage as an introduction. I'll come back to them later. And then a section on what I'm calling the foundations of French genealogical research. As we get into these French records, especially the vital records, we need to know some key concepts about French places and French dates and French numbers that are helpful in understanding these records. So we'll look at what I call geopolitical organization of France and these places that we deal with as a genealogist. And then we'll look also at some unique aspects of French dates, a fun calendar that they used for about 14 years, starting in the Revolution. And then we'll look specifically at some French vital records. These are some of the biggest and most important collections that we'll talk about. And this is the primary best type of content you'll be able to find for France are the vital records. There's really little else that is better than these French vital records, and the coverage is incredible, and the collections that we have to show you today are just amazing. I'll talk about how to find and use these French collections on MyHeritage, and then I've got some nice examples of reading and deciphering both a French civil birth record as well as a French civil marriage record. I hope you'll find that helpful as you understand how to really squeeze everything that you can out of these amazing records. Towards the end, depending on time, I'll touch on some other of our new collections that we've recently published. Great collections from the military category, naturalizations, other things like that. And then along the way, I plan to share at least two, maybe three, what I consider to be sort of power or pro tips. These are things that I found very helpful in understanding these records and how to have good success. All right, so let's go ahead and start. So before just last month, we've here at MyHeritage have been working on a number of French collections. We have a very nice collection of civil records from the Department of Nord, and I'll talk about these departments in just a minute. A very large death index and a few other things you see here. So all about 40 to 50 million records before October. However, the scene has totally changed. Just in the last few weeks, we've released from our acquisition of Filet. If you're unfamiliar with this company, so this is a company that's actually been in existence for I think 15 or more years. They used to be called Notre Famille. They primarily serve or have served the French genealogy market, and they have done a wonderful job of going throughout France and creating finding aids or indexes to these records. And we decided as a company that we wanted to accelerate the content that we can bring to the MyHeritage users. And so the acquisition of Filet occurred earlier this year, and we're happy to bring these records to you on MyHeritage now, when previously you'd only find these on Filet. So the week of October 12th through about the 17th, we released almost 500 million new French records. I mean, this is one of our largest single releases ever, was I think October 12th when we released over 400 million new records. So really exciting developments here for French genealogists and MyHeritage users, and I'll continue to dive in a little bit more, because not only is that the only thing we have to talk about, but just this last week, we've released another 15 million records. Again, you see military collections here, some other censuses specific to some French departments, a nice naturalization collection that I had mentioned before. So I call this, so previously if that was Filet Phase 1, and this is what we're calling Filet Phase 2. And there's going to be more phases and releases in the coming weeks and months. We have a number of large collections from Filet, a very large set of additional civil and church vital records that we're working with Filet on getting some of the license terms nailed down so that we can put those on MyHeritage, as well as an exciting and really nice collection of genealogical trees that the Filet community has been developing for a very long time. And we're looking at how we can get those on MyHeritage. One of the biggest things we're waiting for there is to give all of the Filet users a chance to tell us if they want their trees to be brought to MyHeritage or not, or we're simply going to abide by whatever they decide to tell us to do. So that'll probably happen in December, maybe into January, will be that tree collection. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about geopolitical hierarchy as we try to understand how to use these amazing records. All right, so when people talk about France, you'll hear this term metropolitan France. And when I first heard this, I was a little confused because I'm used to thinking of this word metropolitan in the context, say, of a large city here in the United States. like it's commonplace to say, the metropolitan area of Dallas, Texas. That's not really what we're talking about here in France. Metropolitan France simply refers to that part of France that is in Europe, meaning the part of the European continent that is France, as we know it today, as well as the island of Corsica, just off to the southwest of France. So that's what's called metropolitan France. Oftentimes when we think of France, I think that's what we're thinking about is the country here in Europe. But France, just like the United States, has a number of overseas possessions. And I'll talk about that in just a moment. So France is broken up into 13 regions. I should say metropolitan France is broken up into 13 regions. And there's 5 additional regions that exist around the globe where they have additional French possessions that are ruled by France. So France is also divided into what are called departments. And these departments play probably the most important role to us as genealogists. Each and every one of these departments have a departmental archive. Some of the larger cities within the departments have their own municipal or city archive that also have wonderful genealogical records. But these departments in France have been very active over the last number of decades first, they were microfilming their records and having those available on microfilm with limited sort of distribution in certain libraries and institutions. And the last 10 to 15 years or so, they've been very active in digitizing those microfilms and doing an additional digital capture of their records to bring those to the public. So these French departmental archives, wonderful websites where you can find many of the original images available there, but they have not done much work in indexing these records that they hold. And that's really where Filet saw an opportunity to create these wonderful indexes that I'll show you some examples of in just a minute for these amazing records that we have in France. So in metropolitan France, there are 96 departments, and then there's 5 additional departments overseas. In this map, the square at the upper right shows the 5 departments that are in basically the metropolitan area of Paris, or that's a wrong way to use that word in this context, but Paris and its suburbs. And then the other 5 boxes around the edges are these overseas departments and regions. All right, so these overseas departments, there's 2 departments in the Caribbean, that's Guadeloupe and Martinique. There's a department on the continent of South America, Guyane. And then there's 2 departments, both island departments there near the island of Madagascar. And then they have a few other possessions that aren't departments, but are also still ruled by France. So for many of us here in the United States, if you want to go to France, the closest place is to go to this little archipelago right below the island of Newfoundland there in Canada. It's called Saint-Pierre-et-Miquelon, if I'm saying it correctly. So you can go there and you're in France and you'll be seeing people that speak French and they use euros and all that. All right, so I really like this diagram where it shows a little bit more about France. It's divided into these regions, and then there's these departments, and then below the departments, they're what are called communes. So if we were doing English research, we'd call these a parish or a civil parish. These are kind of the equivalent of a civil parish per se in France. And these communes were initially developed along with the departments that I just spoke about in 1792, really at the start of the French Revolution. All right, so for example, here is a map of metropolitan France with 1 department. They're colored in colored in red at the very top. And this is the Department of Nord. If we were to translate that into English, it would simply be called North, but it's known as Nord. And so if we were to look at just this 1 department, here on the right, I'm showing all of the little communes that exist in the Department of Nord. And if we zoom in, say, on just this 1 portion of the department, we can find maps online such as this one that show us names of these communes. One of the biggest cities in Nord, I think it is the single biggest city in Nord, is the city of Lille, and you'll see it there in the center. It has something like 250,000 people. One of the smallest communes in Nord that I'm aware of has only 63 inhabitants today. So the size can vary immensely based on the development over time and what cities are there and how cities have grown and developed. So you'll have communes with hundreds of thousands of people and communes with just dozens of people. It really just depends. So here's another map of metropolitan France with all of the communes sort of drawn. It's certainly very hard to see kind of what's what, but to give you a feel, there are a very large number of these communes for a country the size of France. To give you a sort of a comparison, in the United States, we have just over 4,000 counties. And so for them to have an equivalent level of what we would consider a county at over 35,000 of these it's really unique, really throughout the world. All right, so let's look at how we'll be able to search with places as we build up this foundation to use these records. So from that map that I just showed, I want us to consider this commune that I just picked called Aveline, Avelin. It's just south of Lille, I think about 10 kilometers. And so when we search on MyHeritage and other places, we might see this represented just with its commune name. We might see it represented with the commune and department. We can also see it represented with the commune, department, and the country. And then another permutation is the commune, the department, the region, and the country. And the reason why I highlighted that last one in orange is that's usually how you're going to see us on MyHeritage represent these places, at least 4 levels of jurisdiction. Sometimes we'll show a 5th level. Like, for example, in Lille, there might be the commune of Lille, but there's actually the city proper itself, and so there might be, or another city within that large commune. And so sometimes if we know the name of a town or village within a commune specifically, you might see that also represented. And that would appear at the very far left as the lowest jurisdictional level. All right, so another thing we need to talk about are French dates. And there's no better place to start with French dates than the French Republican calendar. So this calendar was started during the Revolution in 1792, and it was used by the French government for 14 years, from 1792 to 1805. And so the reason why I bring this up is if you have a family that lived during this period in France, or if you're looking for records that have any events in these date ranges, you need to be aware of the French calendar, or the French Republican calendar, and what we've done to help you deal with this as a genealogist. So we'll get to that in a second. So in this interesting calendar, years were sometimes denoted just in Roman numerals. So in some records you'll see these years 1 through 14 in Roman numerals. And they decided to start the year on the autumnal equinox, usually the 22nd or 23rd of September. Months were given entirely new names based on nature, and each month had 30 days. Here's an example of one of the months in the French Republican catalog, Nivose, from December to January. And Nivose was named after this Latin word nivosus, which means snowy. Another example, so 2 more months I put up there, and the last one there, Ventos, was named after this Latin word, which means windy. And so entirely different months. Understanding how to convert these is somewhat complicated, but what I'm wanting you to understand is that when we present dates to you from this time period, 1792 to 1805, in our indexes, we've already done the transformation of these French Republican calendar dates to what are known as Gregorian dates. That's Gregorian calendar is what really all the countries in the world use today. So when you're looking at the index, you're going to see Gregorian dates that you and I use all the time and grew up with. But sometimes if you're in records, you're going to see these French Republican dates. Then people would ask, okay, 12 times 30, you don't get to 365, and that's correct. They had 5 or 6 extra days at the end of the year, and those were national holidays. And I've looked at some records that land exactly within this time frame, and they use this word complementary days or other types of words. So if you're in the middle of September, be aware that you might hit some even more non-standard French dates. All right, so working with months. So the 12 months, as we know them in the Gregorian calendar, and that we've learned if we've studied French, they're really pretty similar to English, right? Most of these you could kind of guess if you had never seen this before. So yeah, definitely feel like you can easily recognize and understand French months. They're really very, very similar. Maybe the biggest difference is August. The others are really, really close. All right, so I mention this because dates and months and years and all these event dates are very often, almost always, written out longhand in these records. So for example, the year 1863 is represented in these records as 1863. And so to understand how French numbers work, I put up a little table here for you with 0 through 9 and 10 through 19. And you'll see some similarities to how we number things in English, such as, say, the word 18, where we use kind of an 8 and teen to mean this sort of addition, right? 8 and 10, 18. So you see similarities like that in the French language. There are some differences, though. I've always found it amusing that there's no word in French for 70. So to compose numbers in the range of 70, you use 60, 60, and then you add 1 through 9, or excuse me, 10 through 19. So to say 75, we say 60 plus 15, 75. Or to say 79, we say 79, 60 plus 10 plus 9. Now the 80s and 90s are also tricky, where there's no word for either 80 or 90 in French. Instead, they use this notion of 80, which is 4 20s. 4 times 20 is 80, right? So you get to do some mental math as you're thinking about these numbers. So for example, let's look at how would we write the number 97? It would be 4 20s plus 10 plus 7, 97. All right, so if we're to decompose this 1863 example, we have the word mille, which is the word for 1,000. So they're saying 1,000. 800 is 800, and then 63, so 1863. And very often this is how you'll see dates written in these records, almost always. All right, so let's jump in a little bit more into these church and vital records now that we have some of that foundation behind us. The main date that you want to keep in mind is September 1792. And so this is an important date in French genealogy. So from September 1792 forward, the French government established a wonderful process of collecting civil vital records of the entire population. So these are births, marriages, and deaths. Prior to September of 1792, the records were really collected by the priests, in this case in France, primarily the Catholic priests. Other Protestant denominations were certainly able to have their own records as well. But just remember, if you're looking for ancestors with any type of event, a burial, a marriage, or a baptism, or a Christian a christening, those are going to be in the earlier church parish vital records. The map that I'm showing you here shows that the coverage that we currently have in our collection for the civil vitals from 1792 forward is very robust. In fact, we're only missing one single department, the Department of Guerre, and we're working on trying to fill that gap. The story isn't quite as robust, though, for the older records, the parish church vitals, and we're working to improve that. And you'll see more of those indexes and the images associated with those be coming forth in the years as we go forward. All right, so at this point, I want to switch over to the MyHeritage website, and let's actually look at how to find these vital records collections from France and do a search. So I'm going to go to the collection. All right, so to get here, I just clicked on the research tab, and I'll just let that drop down. I can click collection catalog. Now at this point, I have a number of different ways I could get there. I can just type France up here. I can go over to the facet system. I can look here in Europe and refine down into collections from France. And right now it's sorted by the number of records. So these really, really large church and civil vital records will come up first. And so I can go ahead and click on church baptisms and civil births. All right, so I just want to start with a very basic search here. And let me go back to what we call the basic template. Most of our templates on MyHeritage have an advanced mode and a basic mode. The advanced search really lets us add full dates, for example, and a few other fields, depending on what the collection is. So in this case, I want to look for the last name of someone, Martin. This is one of the most common names in France. And I want to show you some interesting behavior here. So let's look for a birth year in 1894, but I'm going to use this commune in Nord that we spoke about earlier. Let's go ahead and hit search. All right, so at this point, I'm getting a whole bunch of results, 810,000 results. Wow, that's quite a bit. And if you scroll down here, you'll see eventually some of these records are no longer from Nord or this commune. And so I can come here to the birth and baptism control, and I can say, I just want records that perfectly match this single commune. Let me go ahead and apply that. And that's going to greatly reduce the number of results. So now I'm seeing all of the baptisms and births in about the year 1894 for anyone named Martin. And so this could be helpful if you're doing, I want to try to find other siblings of my ancestor. I can look by just the surname, and looking through 56 results is not a too scary proposition. In the case that I want to show you, I want to actually look more closely at this first result here, this Julia Marie Martin. So when we come to what we call the individual record view, we get some information here, pretty similar to what I saw on the previous page, but there's an image down here, right? And that's where we get super excited. And so you'll see how it's highlighted in sort of this purple color, and that shows us where this record is on this page. The way the French records were collected is in this sort of paragraph format, and this image, for example, shows 2 pages. Each page has 2 records on it. And I want to jump back to my deck because I'm going to dissect this record very carefully with you to show you how to really squeeze everything out of this. Before I go there, though, I did want to mention the record that we'll look at, this one on the upper left, is a birth, and I can see that because it says naissance up here in the top part of the record. But these other 3 records are deaths. And so this is also something to be aware of, is these records sometimes mix the events together. It's really sort of a chronological record of what was being recorded. So if today a person walks in and needs to report a birth, I'll write that down as a civil registrar. And if the next event to be recorded is a marriage, I just write that, maybe another marriage, and then a death, maybe 2 or 3 deaths, maybe another birth. And so they can certainly be intermixed. Some communes, though, kept separate books. So you'll see some sequences of images where it's all births, page after page after page. So it just kind of depends. Right, so let me jump back to my deck, and I want to show you. So here's the example that we just found, this Julia Marie Martin. And again, here's the whole image. I'm going to zoom in just on this one portion here in the upper left. All right, so all that work we did to talk about French dates and numbers, this is where we're going to start to use that. And we'll use it even more in the next example of a marriage, because there are dates hidden down in the record that aren't in the index that we need, or hopefully we can decode. All right, so on the right, for each rectangle that I'll pop up, I give my translation of what the record is saying. All right, so this is the year 1894, the 2nd of December, appeared. Now, all the stuff between the 2nd of December and this French verb is really information about, okay, now I'm the civil registrar, and this is my name, and these people are coming to the office. It's kind of this bureaucratic common stuff that they write at the top. So now, once we see this comparu verb, we're ready to now see what's coming after, which is, in this case, the name of the father. So here we have Désiré Louis Martin, and he is 33 years old. He's a carpenter, charpentier, And it also says that he lives in a house in Evelyn, this commune, and that he's presented a baby girl who he declares was born today, aujourd'hui. So sometimes it'll say today. It's also common to see it say the French word for yesterday, which is hier, or the day before yesterday, which is avant-hier. And so if this record said hier, we could say, okay, the birth actually didn't occur on the 2nd of September. That's the day that this person, this father is coming to the office. The actual birthday might have been the 1st of December if this said hier instead of aujourd'hui right here. And his wife, or the mother, is this Victoria Marie Cardon. Now, when I first was trying to decipher this record, I wasn't sure if this was Cardon or Gardon. So I want to show you a tip or trick that I use to help me sometimes get around these difficult name problems. And so there's this great site that I recommend to you called geopatronymy.com. And here I can enter surnames that I'm trying to figure out, is this really a valid French surname? Where does it occur in the country? And so in this case I was referring to, I'm trying to figure out if the surname is Gardon or Cardon, starting with a C or starting with a G. So if I look for the surname Gardon, I get some results. It does look like it's a valid French surname. And up here in Nord, I get, let's see if I can find it here in the list. It's very rare, 59. So if I could find it here in the list, I would see it. But this is a pretty rare surname, especially in the northern part of France. So let me go back and let's try our other version. So what if the surname is Cardon? Wow, look at this. So in Nord, this department that we're in, it's one of the most, well, it's the most common place where this surname occurs. No other department has more occurrences of this French surname than this department of Nord. Let me turn off my translation here. So that's sort of one of my power tips and tricks, is use these surname mapping sites to help us figure out surnames and their occurrences. The other thing I would definitely encourage you to always look at is to go to Wikipedia, right? It's hard to think of a better use of the internet than Wikipedia. And so I'm going to search for communes of Nord. And in this case, I just want to see if I can find more information about this specific commune, this AVELIN. So I'm getting this nice list of these communes, and I can click here on it, and I'm brought to a different article, and I'm getting a picture of the church and a place map. But all in all, it's a pretty short article. And my tip is, whenever you're doing research in these countries where there's a dominant language other than English, go over to the language section here on Wikipedia and look at the article in its dominant local native language. So I'm going to click on Francais, and I get a much more robust article. Now it's in French, but using Chrome with its built-in translation capability, I can translate this to English. So now I'm looking at an English machine translation of this more robust article on Wikipedia that I would not have necessarily seen in Wikipedia if I didn't think to come and look at this in French. So that's my second really helpful tip and trick. One thing that I like here is they give a nice map of the commune. This is probably a modern map, but you can see some of the roads and houses as they sit today. Let me come back to my deco, and let's continue on with our example here. So we've got the name of the father, the name of the mother, and this is his wife, and we get her age. She's 32 years old. And then this phrase, which means to which infant he has given the forenames of Julia Marie. Now, before we end with the record, it's always good to look here at the bottom to see who else is listed. So many of these French records, almost all of them, have additional witnesses or témoins, as you would say in French, that were brought to the registration office with the person doing the primary informant, let's say, would bring these people generally with them. So here we have a Louis Chrétien. We have a Jules Montel. So let's see, Louis is, does it tell us? I thought he was a brother. And Jules is, let's see, these are friends. Yeah, so down here it says friends of the person coming to report this. These are friends. So in this case, we don't know exactly if and how these people are related. And then we get signatures. So here we get the signature of the father, the signature of Louis, the signature of Jules, and then this fourth signature appears to be the signature of the civil registration office person himself. All right, so here's the next example that I want to do this with, and this is a this is a vital marriage record. So here's an example of a record that we can find on MyHeritage. This is in Le Mans, in the department of Sarthe, in Pays de Loire, France. And so in this case, there's 5 levels. So that lowest level, Mans is probably at this time referring to the city within this department of Le Mans, and maybe that helps us disambiguate that they might have been in the same, the commune of Le Mans. They might have, to disambiguate other people that were in Le Mans but living elsewhere. So we can find this record on MyHeritage, and I'm going to go through the same decomposition task here in just a moment. On the right, I'm showing you what it looks like on MyHeritage. Very similar type of behavior. One thing I do want to point out before I move on to that is when I'm looking at a image here in MyHeritage, if I want to get a version without the highlighted purple area, I simply click on this button to download a version of the image without any of the UI elements, and this will have the image really as we have it, and you can simply save it to your computer. So you're able to save that really easily. All right, so let's go ahead and look at what we get in a marriage. So marriage records generally are longer than a birth. And so in this case, we have 2 marriages, one on the left, the end of one at the very top of the left page. This is another thing to be aware of, is these records will sometimes start on one page and flow to the next. You see over on the bottom of the right page, we have what looks to be a marriage where the only the very top part of that is on that page, and then you'll have to go to the next image to see the rest of the image, the rest of the record for that record. All right, so let's look just at this record in more detail. So this is an Armand Blanchette, who's marrying Marie Constance. All right, so the year 1880. So this is the year 1880. Now this date will be in our index, but there's going to be some birth dates here later on that are not in the index that we're going to have to be able to read to figure out the exact birth date of, say, the bride and the groom. All right, and this is the 13 November, the 13th of November, and here's the name of the groom. This is Armand Blanchette. It gives us his age. He's 37, and he was born at this Montfort place, probably another commune within this department of Sarthe. And then we get his birth date, right? So this is where what we learned about with French months and dates and years comes into play. So this is le 22, the 22nd December, 1842, so 1842. So that's his birth date. So marriage records are awesome because once we find the marriage of the bride and the groom, we then know where to go look for their birth records. Right? Super helpful. And then this French phrase, fille majeure, so this is meaning a child of the person being named, but this is a child who is old enough to give his or her consent to be married. This isn't the case of a minor, which would have a different label here. So this is an adult child of this man, Armand Blanchette. So the son and the father have the exact same name. And of the mother of our groom is Francois Papin. And then on the other part of the marriage, or the bride, we get Marie Constance Barrault. She is 29. The word right next to the end of her age is cuisinière. She's a cook. That's her occupation. And she's born at this place, this other commune here in this department of Sarthe. And this was a bit of a tricky one for me to decode because I'm not super familiar with all these communes. And so again, Wikipedia really helps me out. So I can come again back to Wikipedia and let's just search communes of this department, and I got to get into the right language version, excuse me, of Wikipedia. There we go. Let me get back to the English one. Communes of Sarthe. And here's a nice article. And so down here, I get a list of the various communes within this department. And by looking at that, I was able to figure, okay, it's probably this one. This is the one that seems to match most closely with what I'm seeing on the actual written record. So she was born in this other commune, and that'll be helpful to me to go help me find her birth record there in the date that we're about to give. So she was born on the 17th of April in 1850, or 1850. And she's the adult daughter of this man, Jacques Barrault. So that's the father of the bride. And the mother of the bride is this Marie Mauboucher. And so this was another surname that I really struggled with to decode, but that website that I showed you was super helpful. So coming back here, I'm going to search for this surname, Mauboucher. And the department that we're in, or Sarthe, is here number 72, and it's one of, in fact, it's the second, or that surname occurs only more frequently in one other department, and so there's some evidence that I'm on the right track here with that surname. So coming back, they reside. Let's see this last one, and so they, meaning the father and mother of the bride, reside in this commune. We get the names of the bride and groom again, partway down through the record, and then we get some other names here at the bottom. And so this first one, this Louis Blanchette, it gives us his age, his occupation, and he's the brother of the husband. And then we get another person, Louis Frossard. We get his age, and he's an uncle of the bride. And then another name, here's an Auguste Barrault, and he is a brother of the bride. And so you definitely want to look through the bottom of the record to find out who else was there to witness the marriage, and you'll often get clues about not only their ages, their occupations, and potentially their relationships to your couple that you're researching. All right, so I'm going to talk just a moment about French census, and then we'll stop and take some questions. All right, so from 1836 until 1936, they conducted what we would call a quinquennial census. So here's a new word for your Scrabble dictionary or your Scrabble games: quinquennial, occurring every 5 years. Right? Wouldn't it be great in the United States or Canada or England if we had a census every 5 years? Well, we have a decennial census, but here in France we get them every 5 years. Isn't that incredible? With two exceptions. So the 1871 census was delayed a year due to what's known as the Franco-Prussian War, or in France it's called the War of 1870. The French didn't really fare well in that conflict, and actually caused the collapse of what was called the Second French Empire. They did get around to conducting the census, though, just a year later in 1872. And I have a typo here, I apologize. The 1916 census was not conducted due to World War I, and it was not subsequently redone. They just didn't hold that one. So we do have a 10-year time period between censuses there around the World War I time period. Just like we see throughout the rest of the world, these French census records are an excellent source for finding our ancestors in houses and relationships. The French censuses have not been indexed as widely as the vital records, but that will start to change in the coming years. On MyHeritage now today, we have an 1872 France census that is partial. It does contain 67 departments of the 96 departments. And the collection, when you find it on MyHeritage, I've listed all of the departments that are included. So for example, if I come to MyHeritage and we'll just look for that 1792 census in the collection catalog, I can just say 18. I can type something like this, it's going to bring it up. And the 1872 census. And if I click on this little down arrow, I'm given a list of all of the departments that it does contain. So the census records, unlike we see here in the United States or in England or Canada, the census records are not centralized at the national level. They're kept by each and every department. And so the process of indexing the census records is really to go to each and every one of these 96 departments and find what they've digitized, what they have on film, and to then build these indexes that way. So it's a little bit more of a challenging process, but we're starting to work through that. These census records are really fun. Our example that we used here in 1872 was the painter Claude Monet, and he's listed here in the records with, I think, himself, a wife, a child, and a servant. So here's Claude Monet. We get his occupation. He's an artist or a painter, and what looks like to be a spouse, a young child, and a servant. The servant is 22 years old, and she's from Luxembourg, actually. So those are just a really quick look at some of the census records. Another collection that we have is the 1906 France census, as well as smaller pieces of the 1901 and 1911. When you find these on MyHeritage, again, I've tried to include or have included a list of all the departments that you'll currently find. And as we update these, add more departments, we'll certainly keep those updated. I wish I had time to go into more of the collections with you, but what I recommend is if you want to learn more about our recent French publications, go to the blog at MyHeritage. So Esther and her team do a wonderful job with the blog. It's updated it seems like multiple times a week. Wonderful articles there that we collaborate with them on from the content team, as well as their other work that they do with the blog. You'll find these two wonderful articles there about close to 500 million new records from France that you'll find on MyHeritage. And I hope that's helpful, and I've enjoyed being with you. And with that, let's go to some questions. Esther.
Okay. Oh, I see there we go. That's a little better. Thank you, Mike. Thank you so much. And I learned so much about the French calendar, and it was just so fascinating. And a lot of the background really helps when you're looking at the records themselves to understand, the makeup, the composition. So that was very, very interesting. We do have a few questions from the audience, if that's okay. Before we get to that, I'm just going to read out a nice comment I saw here from Julie. She said, "It's so great that you added the Filet records to MyHeritage. Now I have tons of record matches to check." So, Mike, when the records are added, automatically will our users receive record matches? How does that work?
Yeah, so when we add records like this, record matches do get computed. It can take some time, though, for all of those matches to be computed. So I would, you can check today, but if you do or don't see some, doesn't mean you shouldn't come back in a week or a month and see if there's additional ones. Also, because these collections are really just a few weeks old and we're adding more collections really on a weekly basis, definitely come back and look.
Okay. I see a different Julie wrote, and she said, "Even for French speakers, it can be difficult to decipher this writing, especially earlier records. So the indexing really helps."
Yeah, definitely. And my experience is, if you take time, look at a record carefully, you can get your way through it. At first, they can look really scary, but if you're on a record that's of your ancestor, boy, you really want to dig in there and find everything you can, because there's some great information.
Okay, great. We have a question hear from Irene. She said, I'm looking for someone, I know it's a little bit specific, but maybe you have some advice for her. She said, I'm looking for someone from France in the 1750s to the 1780s. I have his town name, but there are 6 or 7 towns with that name in France. Is it possible to search for the town when I don't know the department? I know he was Catholic.
Yeah, no, this is a great question and something that I actually wondered myself. So there's what, 36,000 communes in France, and what I've never done or found out for myself yet is if some of these communes share the same name. Just like here in the United States, there's 37 states have a city named Springfield. Does this same thing happen in France? And I think this comment is pointing to this fact that yes, this can happen either at the commune level or down lower at the town level. So yeah, so our search system, if you put in just the name of a town, it's going to try to find all records where that town might be in, Department X or Department Y or Department Z. It's going to use what you put it to the best of its ability. 1880. So we have some coverage of those earlier church records. 1780, excuse me. We have some coverage of those earlier church records. It's still not what I call robust yet, but it's definitely worth a try to see if you get kind of lucky at this point. If you think that they died though after 1792, try to find their death record because that can point you to where they were born. I wish I had time to decompose a death record like I did with the marriages and the births, but they'll very often give you clues about where the person is from and where they were born. So a wonderful concept I was taught long ago as a genealogist is, it sounds a little morbid, but try to kill off your ancestors, right? Find those death records because they can help you find more information about the earlier parts of their lives. We sometimes forget that, yeah, of course they died. Who kind of, just needs to know more about that. But those records can be very helpful.
And actually, just for our audience here, we had two recent Facebook Live sessions about death records, about cemetery records. So definitely go and dig those up. They're available on the MyHeritage Facebook page under the videos section. So for anyone looking to find those death records, that's a good resource, a good place to start. We have, let's see, there was a question here I saw from Victoria. She said, it is rumored my ancestor was a staff officer to Napoleon. Where could I find out more information? So I guess everyone wants to find famous ancestors.
Yeah, no, so French military records are one of the best resources for genealogy in France. They're probably not as prevalent as the vital records, but they're ranked very highly. And so you'll see some of the collections we've already produced are various types of French records. If you can find this person's death record, it's fairly likely to name his occupation as some sort of officer. It might even say that he was, officer to Napoleon or something like this. But the French military records that we have, and again, we haven't done them all, kind of chipping away at this big mountain. Many of those will start to give us information about these soldier services. And so some of the service records that I've seen definitely name the units that they're in and things like that. So I would start trying to find their death and see if you get any clues there that indicate military service. And then look at some of our other military collections. We don't have them all yet. There's a lot to go there.
Okay, great. We'll just take one last question before we do our giveaway. This question is from Lloyd, and he asks, any records to come from the armies of the French emigre 1791 to 1815?
I think the answer is yes. I would have to look through the military collections that we have from Filet and others that we're targeting to see if that particular period is represented. So how about a maybe?
Okay, great. Do you want to tell us in general what our users can expect in terms of upcoming French collections? There's more to come.
Yeah, there's definitely more to come. So the team's working hard on building an integration with the Filet user contributed tree system. Now, we all know the issues with user trees. They can be awesome and they can be not so awesome, but it's often a very good place to get clues that can inform our own research. The catalog is large, and I don't have it all memorized, but there are certainly more military collections, more naturalization, more immigration, and then there's a number of collections that'll add more coverage to our vital records as well.
Amazing. And as you said, Mike, users can expect to get record matches with these collections soon after they're added. So definitely stay tuned and keep checking those record match emails that you receive.
Yeah, and again, I would say, if to get record matches, you have to have a tree. So if you don't have your tree on MyHeritage, that's your first step to trying to see what we can do for you in an automated way. And record matches and smart matches, it's incredible. And there's really, that's an important step to take is to get your tree or part of your tree. Maybe you just have one branch that's French. Try to get at least that branch then on MyHeritage so you can see what matches we can produce for you against it.
Get it working for you overnight. Okay, fantastic. We have one lucky winner today. We're going to be giving away a MyHeritage DNA kit to somebody who made a discovery in MyHeritage historical records. So our winner today is Dulcie Grippich, and Dulcie wrote to us and said, about 2 weeks ago, I stumbled upon a marriage of an English cousin to an American woman in your French collection. Eureka. So that's a great discovery, Dulcie, and we'll be in touch with you through private message to claim your prize. I'm sure, Mike, that there are just so many discoveries that our users are making through these new collections.
Yeah, one of the largest releases of vital records I've ever seen in my 20+ year career in the industry. It's rare when you see, 500 million vital records hit a website. So yeah, it's awesome. I wish I had French family.
Don't we all? I think we all do after this edition.
Right.
Incredible. So to all of you with French heritage, now's your chance to make these incredible discoveries. And if you find out more from these records, we'd love to hear about it. So make sure to comment on the Facebook post or send us a message, and we love hearing your stories. So Mike, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
And we hope to have you back again soon. Thank you, everyone in the audience, and have a great day.
Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.